Dominican Republic. Wow, Fort Myers, Vermont. We're worldwide, everybody. We are worldwide. Excellent. Yeah, Tallahassee in the house, Jacksonville, Michigan. Woohoo! All right, I am excited. Okay, everybody. Lake Worth. Wow. So, Iran, salam. That's great. Okay, everybody. Well, welcome wherever you are in the world. Welcome. I'm so excited that to be here with you all. I love seeing where everybody's from. We get to the world feels so much smaller, when we're here. We're all together. We get to connect worldwide. We're all kind of in this community, right, of teaching and professional development. So, hello, everybody. Welcome again. We have our first episode, actually, of our four-part webinar series. This is part one, Teaching Reading, where we're going to focus on strategies, activities, and resources. So this is part one, Teaching Reading. We're going to be doing part two, Teaching Writing, then part three, Teaching Listening, part four, Teaching Speaking. And we're going to try to provide, current research and, activities, resources that you can apply yourself if you're currently a teacher of ESOL and literacy in this case, and also resources that you can share with your colleagues. So that's a big part of this as well. You are here, you're taking the time for your own professional growth. You're showing leadership already. You're leading yourself, and you sharing resources and cultivating your own communities of teaching practice is also developing leadership. So I want to applaud you for being here today. Rob says, Duval. All right, fantastic. Well, my name is Ramin Yazdanpana, and again, I have the pleasure of leading us today. But I'm a collaborator as well. I'm going to be asking you to also participate in the chat, continue to participate in the chat through sharing of ideas, resources as we go along here. All right, so let's jump into it. Okay, so if you have a question, just go ahead and type it into the chat. I will be, looking over to the chat every once in a while just to catch up, see if there's any questions or comments. Your microphones are muted. You'll be only in listen mode. This presentation is being recorded and it will be archived and available on the IPDE website within 48 hours. So thank you to my friends at IPDE for all that you do for us. Okay, a bit of an overview here of what we're going to discuss. So first is a rationale for teaching reading. Then the science of reading, we're going to discuss that a bit. Top-down and bottom-up reading skills, reading activities and resources, specifically across extensive and intensive reading. Reading activities and resources that focus on phonics, goal-directed reading instruction, and then we'll kind of put it all together in developing online student portfolios and learning plans. So this is, of course, Tech Tuesday, so we'll have a tech perspective on things today. But a lot of these resources and strategies are for both, in the classroom as well as online for follow-up instruction. And then finally, I'll share some extra PD resources that I've curated for us all. Okay, so a bit of rationale. So adults, as we all know, require high levels of literacy and English proficiency. Reading skill and digital literacy deficits affect access to resources such as information and opportunities for personal and professional growth. And that's just more and more the case every week, it seems, right? Such as, digital literacy, financial literacy, just to name a few. So 14% of adults in the United States can't read well enough to read a job application, and 52% of adults are not able to read lengthy and complicated texts. So you see how this is not just an issue of illiteracy, but it's also an issue of just not having fully developed reading skills. So these mid-level readers, which are often the largest percentage of adult learners, have extremely varied reading needs. And although they have developed some proficiency in word identification skills, they still need to increase their reading fluency, their speed, right, through building vocabulary and improving comprehension. So the research clearly shows that students benefit from structured reading instruction. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that structured reading instruction could look like. And of course, we have a multi-level classroom reality, no matter really who we are, okay? And so differentiated instruction and of reading instruction, as well as reading resources, are also something to take into consideration. So with all this, even though research has clearly shown that students benefit from structured reading instruction, research shows that teachers of adult ESOL and literacy don't spend enough time on reading instruction and practice, particularly around extensive and prolonged reading. So, there could be multiple reasons for this, but basically, it can be things like limited class time, just lack of resources, lack of know-how. There can be various reasons, right? The fact is that learners need to develop learner autonomy to not only be able to understand how to read and read extensively inside of class, but also how to carry those skills over to be autonomous learners and continue reading extensively outside of class. So we'll talk about that as well. And obviously, the world that we live in now, with all of the technology, the online tools and resources that support literacy and skill development, are vital, right? They're vital for us to understand what they are, how to apply them. So again, we can develop this learner autonomy with our students in the classroom so they can apply those skills outside of the classroom. So it's a big, teaching reading is challenging, right? It's one of my favorite skills to teach. It's also one of the most challenging to teach. And I'm sure that you have similar kind of sentiments. The fact is that reading is foundational, right? It's foundational to as just a skill for the learning of language, but it's also foundational to students' lives, right? To economic opportunities, to their ability to fully engage in society, to think critically. And this not only affects our students, but also affects their communities, and it affects our nation, right? If 52% of adults are not able to read lengthy and complicated texts, this has an immediate impact, right? A direct impact, not only on the individual students, but on the country, okay? Our ability to thrive currently and in the future, in the years to come. So we're all in this together. Okay, so this is a challenge, but you being here is evidence that you're up for the challenge. So if you're up for this challenge for preparing our adult ESOL learners to be better readers, please type in the chat. Please give me a yes, an amen, anything with an exclamation point to just give me some feedback that you're here with me and that you're up for the challenge. All right, thank you. Let's go. All right. So I'm going to take a breather here and I'm going to show you these amazing videos that you can share with your colleagues. I found them to be excellent, right? They're short, they're about 1 minute, and they really illustrate what's known as the science of reading. So let's check the first part 1 here, the reading brain.
What do we know about the complex process of learning to read? Surprisingly, a lot. Scientific research collected over the past 4 decades reveals what happens in the brain and what must happen in the classroom to enable skillful reading. Most children learn to walk and talk naturally without a lot of support from adults. But reading is different. Reading is not hardwired in the brain, and the neural pathways involved must be developed through successful instructional experiences. Let's look at the reading brain. The parts of the brain that allow us to process sounds and recognize visual images are already in place at birth in the left hemisphere. However, the phonological assembly region is not intact at birth. This is the part of the brain that allows us to connect speech sounds with visual images, such as letters, and enables reading. And it must be built through explicit, systematic phonics instruction and practice with decoding.
Okay, so the main point there is that our brains are hardwired. They come prepackaged out of the box to process speaking, right, and listening. Okay, reading though, that is not prepackaged. That's something that needs to be learned, and it needs to be learned explicitly. Okay, so there's going to be more instruction that's needed, more focus, explicit instruction for teaching reading than teaching listening or speaking, for example. Okay, but those parts of the brain that process, listening, that process speaking, are also critical in developing reading competency. Okay, let's move on to part 2 here, the simple view of reading. Again, this is all describing the science, the foundational, fundamental aspects of the science of reading.
When we think about the essential skills children need to build their reading brain, Goff and Tunmer's model, known as the simple view of reading, is quite helpful. In this model, the critical sub-skills of reading are simplified to their essential categories, decoding and language comprehension, and framed as a multiplication equation, with reading comprehension as the product, or goal, on the right side of the equation. The idea is this: strong reading comprehension results only when both decoding and language comprehension are strong. To illustrate this idea, let's assign values of 0 for weak and 1 for strong. If decoding is weak and assigned a value of 0, and language comprehension is strong, a value of 1, reading comprehension is weak because 0 multiplied by 1 is 0. Conversely, if language comprehension is weak but decoding is strong, reading comprehension still suffers. 1 times 0 is 0. Only when both domains on the left side of the equation are strong does reading comprehension become a strong 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. The simple view of reading tells us that children need to learn essential skills to decode to get text off the page, while also developing their understanding of the world and of literacy. Although reading is a complex process, the simple view is helpful because all of the essential sub-skills of reading, such as phonological awareness and vocabulary, can be assigned to the decoding and language comprehension domains on the left side of the equation.
Okay, so I think that was very clear, an understanding of what these different aspects of the science of reading approach, where we have decoding here, right? Phonological awareness, decoding, spelling, sight recognition, as well as language comprehension. So that's understanding background knowledge, vocabulary, grammar, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, all these things that are kind of part of a maybe whole language approach. So it's really a balanced approach is the main message of this. Okay, we're gonna watch one more here, and this is Scarborough's reading rope that kind of brings these two elements of reading together.
Another helpful theoretical model for the reading process is Scarborough's reading rope, which expands upon the simple view of reading. Scarborough's reading rope provides a meaningful visual representation of the process by which decoding, or word recognition, and language comprehension subskills are combined during skillful reading. The decoding subskills are each assigned a strand in the rope: phonological awareness, decoding and spelling, and sight recognition. Under language comprehension, we need to build these reading subskills: background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. Think of these subskills as strands in the reading rope that become stronger and stronger the more tightly the strands are woven together. As the language comprehension subskills grow and get stronger, the reader becomes increasingly strategic in their reading. At the same time, as the reader strengthens their decoding subskills, they're becoming more automatic in their reading. With increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic reading, skilled reading occurs and the reader can comprehend text. Skilled reading appears to be effortless, but a skilled reader has fortified the subskills of the reading rope in order to manage the skills simultaneously and automatically, resulting in reading comprehension.
Okay, so let me know what you think about those videos. Did that make this science of reading approach more clear to you? Let me know in the chat if that's clear there. And just know also that all of that this PowerPoint here, it will be available to you, and all of these links, right? These are active links that you'll be able to click and to access these resources and share them with colleagues. All right, so I'm just going to click out of here, come back. All right, fantastic. Okay, and again, this is just that Scarborough's reading rope here where we have language comprehension. Okay, we have word recognition. These are these kind of strands that are woven, into skilled reading, increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic. So when we read, and I'm sure all of you are lovely readers, you enjoy reading. It's interesting to just maybe, next time that you're reading something, just kind of like have an objective perspective and try to think about this a little bit, saying, how are you bringing, background knowledge into comprehending a text? How is your vocabulary comprehension enabling you to enjoy the text and of course, comprehend the text, right? The same with, your understanding of the literacy knowledge, the genre, right? If it's like a news article or whether it's a narrative, how does your understanding of that genre help you to comprehend the text? And then the word recognition. So that's our phonological awareness, right? Our ability to understand, pronounce, right? Say things, but also understand and hear them. And also to decode, right? Break down words so we understand words, those words into sentences, those sentences into paragraphs. And we're able to do that in an automatic, fluent way to where we can connect ideas. And that's where comprehension comes from as well. Okay. So another similar model, and one that is useful for planning and teaching, is the whole part, whole approach. So if you're thinking about how can I apply this into teaching reading, this is a kind of simple model that you can utilize. So the whole part, whole approach encompasses whole language principles that apply strategies and activities for language comprehension, as well as plans for developing phonological decoding and phonemic awareness. Or with some adult learners, actually just the ability to hold a pencil, write the alphabet, or type on a keyboard. The whole approach begins with developing reading comprehension, all right? So we see that here. So whole text, right? Simple story and image, those are all these fundamental strategies of reading a whole text and understanding it. Moving to phonics work, right? So that phonics instruction is going to work on what we just discussed before, right? Phonemic awareness, decoding, and then coming back to returning to the whole text and extending the text in ways that are relevant to adult ESOL learners' lives, needs, and goals. So both bottom up, both these, all of these here have these top down and bottom up approaches. So you might have heard of these top down approaches. These are more of like, discussing vocabulary, discussing the topic, drawing on students' background knowledge, kind of preparing students for the reading, and then engaging reading to understand things like the main idea, right? The structure of a text. So also then engaging in some phonics work. So that can be phonics instruction that's related to that text, or it can be phonics instruction that's not necessarily related to the text, but that is just building competency with decoding, right? And phonics instruction. So this can be actually like lab work. It could be homework. It can be learning stations, right? So where if you do need to differentiate instruction and work with different levels of learners, you can do that as well. But generally, there's going to be more kind of explicit instruction and systematic instruction in phonics. And there are resources that can help you to kind of guide you through those processes. I'm going to share some with you. But then also always returning back to the whole text, reading for a purpose, reading to not only for the sake of reading, but actually reading to build these skills, these reading strategies, and hopefully also to build knowledge that students can apply that's going to be useful to them to reach their life academic, professional goals as well. So this link here, CASA's Reading Basic Skills and Content. This is the CASA's website. They have some useful resources here. One is this one here. Let me minimize it a little bit. Here we go. And so you can see here that they have these different categories, right, presented. And of course, CASA's is one assessment that is used to measure English language proficiency across different skills. This one is for reading. So we have these different categories, and you have these different standards across, literacy, right, phonics, vocabulary, general reading comprehension, and so on and so forth. So this document can be helpful in that it really kind of, outlines these different standards and how they align with the levels and what kind of needs to be, focused on. So you see here with beginning literacy, beginning low, beginning high, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is where a lot of the phonics instruction is particularly helpful, right? But even I would say when you're getting into maybe intermediate low, you might want to check in and see if phonics instruction can also be helpful. It might be helpful not so much on the kind of decoding every kind of like a word level, or letter level, but it still could be helpful in other ways, and with utilizing, a lot of listening, reading aloud, these kinds of activities to help build listening comprehension and that text and sound association. Okay, that's very helpful for reading as well as for listening comprehension. So there's that resource that you can take a look at, and again to kind of see how these different categories of standards align with the different ESL, ABE, and ASE levels of your students. Okay. All right, so we talked a little bit about these top-down strategies. I'm just going to kind of list them here so you can see. You can scan. You can actually skim this list here and just to get an idea of what we mean by top-down strategies. These are probably strategies that you are already applying. If you're using, a textbook in class, you'll see a lot of these in pre-reading, right, where you might activate schema or the student's background knowledge and understanding of the topic, right, of the text, of the genre of the text, predict content, and then engaging in reading comprehension with skimming and scanning, confirming predictions, reading for details. All these kinds of things are kind of reading comprehension, as well as building these strategies, right? When I was just at the bookstore yesterday and I took books off the shelf and I was skimming, right, the books to see if there was something that was interesting for me. Then if I had a book and I liked it, I said, okay, this looks good. I took some time to read for details to see if it confirmed my predictions about the book. So again, these are all strategies that we apply automatically as strong readers. For our students who are learning how to read in English, This is something where their skills, if they're advanced readers in their first language or another language, they can transfer those skills, right? A lot of times they can transfer these strategies over to English. If our learners are not strong readers in their native language, these are skills that are going to need to be more explicitly taught and reinforced, right? While you are teaching reading. Okay, and just to see again those CASA standards, these are the CASA's standards on phonics. We saw that in that document as well, but you can see here for beginning literacy, the phonics instruction, right? Identify letters, recognize that letters make words, words make sentences, reading from left to right, top to bottom, front to back, relate letters to sounds, relate letters to pronunciation, homonyms, phonological patterns. All right, so let me just take a breather here, and I just see a quick Q&A. Will the recording be of this be available? Yes, absolutely. So it's be available for you and for you to share. Okay, so let's move along here. All right, so here are some phonics teaching resources that I've curated, okay, for you. So I'm not going to go through all of these right now, but I just want to let you know that they're here for you. I think you're going to enjoy each one of these resources. Each one of these resources should be extremely helpful for you and for your colleagues if you are interested in teaching phonics, right? If you're currently teaching phonics, or if you want to develop your program, more kind of systematically, you can apply this as well. I'm just looking here. June posted a online lookup tool that dynamically returns resources that are correlated. Okay, so thank you, June, for sharing that. This is interesting here, post-16 phonics. So a lot of phonics resources that you'll find if you're doing research on phonics are for young learners, right? So young children and pre-adolescent. So this is kind of post-16, kind of post-adolescence approaches to teaching phonics. A really good toolkit here that I recommend you taking a look at, and again is focused on adults. I think all of these actually that I put here are focused for teaching phonics to adult learners. Also here, phonics teaching videos, you can actually see some phonics instruction in action. I know that's always helpful to see other teachers, observe other teachers teaching a strategy or a skill. And so that's there for you. Okay, so I'm going to call on you, June. You read my mind here. Okay, so I want to ask you, okay, again, I told you we're a community here. So what phonics resources can you share to enhance the teaching of reading? Okay, so please post in the chat. And again, it can be just a link. It can be the title of a resource. It can be an activity, anything that comes to mind. Please post it in the chat. The chat will be saved. I will be looking back through the chat and pulling out these resources as well. Okay, please post in the chat. Again, any phonics resources that you have used that you wouldn't mind sharing that can enhance the teaching of reading. And I love this quote here. Don't teach phonics, use phonics to enhance your teaching of reading and writing. So I think the message here of this quote is, don't teach phonics just to teach phonics. Always keep phonics embedded in the teaching of reading, just kind of how we saw that whole part whole approach, where we're focusing on reading comprehension. We're using phonics in order for us to help our students to improve comprehension, right? So sometimes it can feel a little disjointed, but you always need to make sure that you're understanding what students are doing in their phonics instruction and reinforce that when they're reading outside of that phonics instruction. Okay, and I see some contributions here from Jesse. Thank you, Jesse, so much. Gail, thank you. I know it might take a little bit for you all to kind of find resources and post them. You don't need to wait for me. I'm going to keep going. Go ahead and post those resources when you are able. All right. Thank you, Audrey. Okay, so another kind of important concept when teaching reading is that of intensive and extensive reading. So intensive reading texts, I'll say, these are really based on the reading level. So you have to understand what the reading level is of your students to understand what's intensive and what's not. So intensive reading is generally at a reading level that's just above, right, the reading proficiency of the learner. That's like that Krashen's I+1. That's input I. That's the reading. +1 is just a little bit above. So you're reading in an intensive reading for details, right? With specific learning aims and tasks. So those are those reading strategies and skills that we discussed. The texts are short, right? They're less than 500 words. And they're short because, again, you are focusing on the skill and strategy. It is a little bit more difficult. And the purpose is to read it several times, right? I mean, I would say read it 5 to 7 times, with each reading focusing on something different. So the first reading can be a kind of skim of the article, making predictions about it, understanding the kind of genre, so on and so forth, right? But this rereading is kind of scaffolding students to apply these different strategies, to reinforce reading, to build reading kind of confidence. And I've seen this, all the time, where the first reading is difficult, the second time is still difficult, the third is easier. By the time you get to the 7th reading, students comprehend it, they've conquered it. It feels so good to complete a reading in another language. I mean, I know from experience that you've conquered this reading passage, you understand it, you learn from it, okay? And so this is really helpful to do in class, especially because it's really guided and facilitated. And then we have, thank you, Raquel, I see you, I'm gonna come back to you here. So we have extensive reading. So this is where the comprehension of text is 90 to 98%. These are where leveled, graded reading readers can help. Sustained reading with audio, just like Raquel said, right? I like to use both print and audio together, audio-assisted reading. This is where, especially, I would say you could use that both with intensive and extensive reading. So you can use that with both, Raquel. Would you agree? And this is where it's really reinforcing what students already know, right? So you are, it's kind of like shooting a basketball, okay? Or doing anything repetitive, playing piano. You're practicing scales. You are reinforcing what you already know, whether that be through vocabulary, grammar structures, reading fluency. These are, when we can practice and reinforce what we already know, this helps us with fluency. This helps us with reading speed. This helps us with automaticity. Okay, this helps build confidence. This helps us to enjoy the process of reading. Okay, now with this extensive reading, it's really reading once or twice. It can be, again, extensive reading texts. So this is where students can practice in class, but then they can do this independently, right? And so this is why extensive reading is so important, because students can do this autonomously. They need to practice outside of class, and they can come back and share what they've read, but it's really something that needs to be done as much as possible, because this reinforcement of what they're learning and what they have learned, that's again going to build this automaticity in reading, this kind of virtuous cycle of reading. Okay, thank you, Raquel, for that confirmation. All right, so some online reading activities across intensive and extensive reading online. So this is Tech Tuesday, so we're focusing online. And of course, these are some, not all, examples of reading activities. So we have, for intensive reading, textbooks; for extensive reading, leveled readers. And just really quickly for, let me not jump ahead of myself. So textbooks, leveled readers, okay, or graded readers sometimes they're called. For intensive, we have real world texts; extensive reading, maybe YouTube audiobooks. Academic articles for intensive reading. Extensive can be, poems or stories, lyrics of songs. Intensive, student generated texts, maybe from students who are a higher level, right? So maybe a level 4 student is writing something for that level 1 and 2 students can read, and that would be like an intensive reading for them. Student-generated text from the same or lower levels. So this could be extensive reading for higher levels. Text communication, again, that can come from a higher level student. So as we're thinking about how to kind of form study groups or study buddies, accountability partners, collaborative, teams and groups, you can think about this as well, about pairing higher level learners with lower level learners. And the same here with text communication. And then obviously AI generated text. This is present now. It's going to be that much more present in the years to come. It's a fun kind of tool, ChatGPT. Those kind of things are nice to kind of play around with as well. And we'll take a look at that here in the next slide. So here are some, again, some resources, right? Some resources across these different activities. So I'm just going to go through some of these here. For graded readers, again, these links are all here. So for graded readers, this is nice from Oxford. It actually is a quick diagnostic test to understand students' levels, just taking this quick, easy kind of level test. So that's something that you might find useful if you're interested in a graded reader program. To purchase one for your school or for your library might have one, but when you're trying to determine what level of reader is appropriate for your students. Again, this is for extensive reading. Then we have great things like This I Believe. Okay, this is like a real world text where it's, has anyone heard of This I Believe? Let me know in the chat if you heard of This I Believe. But basically, these are essays that real people, okay, famous and not as famous, have written. So they're essays. It has the audio, and it has their essay here. Okay, so again, depending on the reading proficiency level of students, this could be an extensive reading or it could be an intensive reading. I found that these kinds of materials are also really good model examples for writing. Right, so reading can be used to understand a genre, understand an approach to writing, and those two obviously pair well together. This is recorded, so I've had students write essays and then read essays aloud, record them, and we post them on blogs just like this. Right, so these can be shared. Their essays can be shared with their families, with their friends. They can be archived. They can be kept in a portfolio. They can be shared with your admin, with your district coordinators to show the wonderful work that you're doing. Okay, so this next one here, this is an amazing tool from EdTech, the EdTech Center. And this is the EdTech Integration Strategy Toolkit. This is basically all the tech tools in one kind of place, right? So you have instructional routines, program practices. So for example, if we click in instructional routines, we have, how to engage in question using kind of tech tools, right, online. So you have all these different applications here. How to build knowledge, right? So it has these kind of different tools, tech tools of how to build knowledge. Process and practice, right? Productivity documents, survey documents. So all the tech tools, I mean, these guys did an amazing job in putting this together. Okay, responding. So it goes on and on. So you all can hear productivity, presentations. So that's that. Then we have these other tools for communicating, for instruction, for assessment, and then digital skills, right? So if you want to develop some digital literacy, these are some tools that you can integrate into your instruction there. WhatsApp is an incredible, I know this is one of June's favorite applications here. So WhatsApp is a great way to actually develop a community of practice with your learners, with your colleagues. however you want to use it. So WhatsApp groups or communities can be developed in order to, share resources, in order to post questions, in order for students to respond to questions. And then again, as we discussed before, that serves as reading content for others. So we're engaging this kind of real world use of technology, developing, applying skills, reading and writing skills here. You can also record audio using WhatsApp. What I like about WhatsApp is you don't have to go through, like for example, Facebook Messenger. You don't have to go through Facebook in order to get to Messenger. WhatsApp, you just basically need to share a phone number that's shared with the instructor. The instructor makes the group. Okay, so WhatsApp can be a great tool to build collaborative practices, especially outside of class. This is an amazing free resource here for leveled reading. So this is called the Marshall Level Reading Program. It has a mobile app, leveled library, resource library. It's already organized across these different CCRS levels. So if we just click in here, just an example, we'll see here. I'm just going to click on the first resource here. And let me minimize it a little bit so we can see it. There we go. So this is the content. It has vocabulary practice, a Quizlet. It has the story, it has comprehension. It's basically a lesson plan already made for you. And what I really like about these here is that it has audio, but what's so cool is that it has a timed reading timer, countdown timer. The first reading, is read at a slower pace. So let's listen to this.
Level 3.0, Raising a Good Reader. First reading. Read out loud along with me. Reading is important.
Okay, so let's hear the second reading here.
Second reading. Reading is important.
Okay, a little bit more fluent, a little bit faster in the third reading.
Third reading. Reading is important. Juan and Rosa.
Okay, so you can see how it's helping, supporting the reader here into reading more fluently, right? And of course, once you get into phonics and pronunciation kind of work, you can talk about thought groups, how to approach intonation, rise and fall. Those are all things that you can do with these kinds of materials. Just an excellent resource for you to utilize, to share with your students, and to practice in class and then share with your students. This is an associated resource here, Reading Skills for Healthcare Workers. So that's the same approach, just for healthcare workers. Okay, and the list goes on here, all right? You're gonna have, again, all of these things you can look for yourself, but those are some different ways that you can apply online resources. Again, working on them in class at first, building that competence, understanding of how, inside of the class, so students can apply them and reinforce those skills and strategies outside of class. Okay, so again, I'm gonna come to you. What online resources can you share for teaching adult ELLs reading, right? So adult ELLs reading. So not necessarily phonics, but like I shared here, these different online resources. What are some of your favorite online resources for teaching reading? If you could post that in the chat. Again, I will be collecting these resources from the chat, and we'll share that. Thank you, Stacy. So go ahead and post those for our community here. And while you're doing that, I'm just gonna go through really quickly these goal-directed reading instructions of a process that you can apply for goal-directed reading. So first, identify personal reading-related goals, right? So this can be through a needs analysis, questionnaires, and done, be at the beginning of the class and weekly. Choose assessments to identify strengths and needs, right, of students. Help learners assess, right, these strengths and needs, and understand these assessment results. create individual learning plans and help support students to cultivate commitment to those learning plans, provide explicit instruction on these strategies and skills that we discussed, and also discuss the connections between these skills and strategies to actually like real world applications. And then finally, provide tools and tasks for continuous learning outside of the classroom. So here's one example of how to do that. So this is a student portfolio that you can develop with your students for your classes using the Google G Suite. So I created one for you. I created a class portfolio template, okay, that you can, when you click on this, it's going to take you here, okay, so you can see an example of these different folders of utilizing Google Drive to access this. You will need a Google account, but once you have that, you'll have access to this Google Suite. To make any of these folders here, you would just click new folder. And then when you see here, when you click new, you can also create a Google document, create a Google Sheet, that's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, create a presentation, just like the one I'm showing you, Google Slides, and Google Forms, right? So that's for creating assessment and also as well as surveys. So you could set up your classroom here for helping your students to curate a portfolio, right? So portfolio is a way to keep organized, but also to track and help students see their progress, right? So, oftentimes if it's just papers that aren't kept in a very organized way, it's kind of hard to see that progress and keep things organized. And it's kind of hard to measure, like gains, right? Measure proficiency gains. This is one way that it can be done by creating a class portfolio, and then again, being able to share this work with the students as well as with anyone else that's interested in their improvement. So we have things here like create a needs analysis survey using Google Forms, right? About their short, medium, and long-term goals. So if you click here, needs analysis resources, I created a document here that has some resources on that you can utilize for grading a needs analysis. Create a new folder for each student as a portfolio. So each student gets their own folder. Create a weekly English learning plan and upload it to each folder for students to set and schedule weekly goals. So if you look here at, let's see here, weekly English learning plan, I uploaded a schedule maker for you. So you can actually do this in class with students. You can copy this into each student's folder and talk to them, say, hey, let's make a study plan, okay, for the week here. Understand this is a box calendar. When is the best time for you to study, right? When do you have time in your day? And they don't just have to put their study time here. They can put their kind of schedule in general, so they can start to budget their time wisely towards learning. So that's a resource for you as well. Create a study buddy sign up sheet. So this is just one that I made for you all really quickly. I'm sure you can make a better one, but just to collect names, a WhatsApp number, an email, and best times to communicate and collaborate outside of class, right? Again, trying to facilitate continuous learning and autonomous learning. Okay, and each week provide a needs analysis to discuss, modify, and set goals for the following week. And then finally, again, use the G Suite to provide continuous learning task projects, such as a reading log, right? So this is a way to provide some structure, focus, and a task for students to be able to apply. This one is more appropriate, I would say, for intermediate to advanced students. But getting them to go to the website and just take notes and doing a little bit of intentional reading and note taking, as well as vocabulary development, as well as some writing, and then to bring that to class to share with their peers, to share and to, again, create this kind of culture of reading outside of class, and then bringing what they learned to share inside of class. So I'll end here with one of these, my favorite quotes. So this is from James Clear, from his best-selling book, Atomic Habits. And so James Clear says, goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. So, goal setting is essential. It's so important to understand what the goals are of our programs, of our students. But we need to really help and support our students by creating a system, right, that's going to enable them to make progress. And if we can support students in the system, in making it a system that's efficient, that's effective, that's aligned with their needs and goals, and that we help them to stay motivated on the process, not just the product, but the process, in a collaborative way, then students will get there, right? Just like we all do. We all, if we stay focused, if we are committed to what we're doing, and if we put in the time and effort and we're supported in the process, we reach our goals. That's just a fact of life. Okay, so finally, some more resources for you all to access. These are professional development resources that you can continue to explore and share with your colleagues. And are there any questions? Feel free to post any questions that you might have, questions, comments in the chat. We have a little bit more time. I'll just give you a second. You can either use the Q&A or you can use the chat. I'll be monitoring both. And while we're waiting for any potential questions, let me just read the chat here. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing readtheory.org and English, Easy English News. Let me see here. Thank you, Jesse, for sharing stickyBall.net, these phonics printables. Gail, thank you for sharing this abcenglish.org. Audrey, thank you for sharing TextStarter, resources for teaching phonics. And Gail, again, thank you for sharing Pathway to Literacy.org. And Jesse, Literacy Minnesota, all right? English Unlocked Phonics workbooks. And June, thank you for sharing that from Florida IPDE. So thank you all for sharing these resources. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to continue to discuss this topic of teaching reading, resources, anything you'd like to share, anything that you'd like to contribute. Again, we are all part of this IPDE community of teaching practice, and I really, really appreciate you all being here. I can feel you from here. If you can go ahead and take this feedback survey that's helpful to me and to IPDE. I always appreciate feedback. And just to let you all know that tomorrow, IPDE is going to also be presenting, my friend Yolanda is going to be presenting increasing opportunities for adult education learners to pursue a manufacturing career pathway. So that is tomorrow, December 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern. Go to the IPDE site to register for that webinar. And Yolanda is very dynamic and very knowledgeable. So I'm sure that's going to be an excellent webinar. Thank you all so much for your time and for your presence. Thank you for sharing that and sharing your words in the chat, all your participation all across the world. And as we wind down here to the end of the year, I wish you and your families happy holidays, healthy, peaceful, restful, so you can, recharge and be ready for 2024. Thank you, everybody.